We're 445 days from Election Day, but who's counting? Well, there's a new head-to-head poll, and it shows Donald Trump losing not to one or two Democrats, but actually all four of those offered in the poll. Now, who's going to believe a poll like that? Is it just rooting for the resistance? Well, it's from Fox News. Has Biden up 50 to 38, Sanders 48 to 39, Warren 46 to 39, and Harris by a tighter 45 to 39. This has Donald Trump's attention, and here's what he's saying about his potential challenger last night.
But we'll see what happens. Whoever it is, I don't know that it matters, but whoever it is, different people.
Well, it didn't matter exactly in the Fox poll, which admittedly is very early and may relate to name recognition, but each of those Democrats that Fox put up would, in the hypothetical poll, appear to be more popular than Trump if the election were held today. And that goes to a bigger problem that he's aware of. He didn't break 40% against any of them. That's lower than his actual approval rating, which, in fairness, is low but slightly higher at 43%. His disapproval, a near record 56% at a time of stress, of division, of Donald Trump's bungled response, according to many, to these horrific mass shootings. And a new poll of North Carolina by another more right-leaning group, a conservative think tank, shows Trump tied within the margin of error with Democrats there. And their headline for the poll, President Trump leads top Democratic candidates by, well, quote, razor-thin margin. The margin of error, though, more than 4 points. David and Christina are back. What does that look like to you, David?
Historically terrible numbers for an incumbent president in his first term who is touting a strong economy. I mean, these are bad numbers, Ari, as you mentioned, not breaking the 40% threshold, widespread among, he's down 6 to 8 to 10 points from some of these candidates. His disapproval numbers are hitting a historic high. This is a president that's in trouble. I think the one thing Democrats can take from this, which is fascinating compared to where we were about 3 or 4 months ago, when the Democratic primary really started to get legs, there was a conversation around electability. Was Joe Biden the only candidate that could beat Trump? I think what we're seeing right now is any one of these Democratic candidates that emerge can beat the president of the United States. That includes someone who's considered very progressive, like Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders. And I think if you went to kind of the next tier that we didn't really see match up, say the Mayor Petes, the Cory Bookers, the others, if they were to emerge out of Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina as a leading candidate, simply because of their introduction to the nation and their name recognition, they'd be positioned 6 to 8 points ahead of this president as well. This is a good poll for Democrats, clearly, but a historically bad one for the incumbent president of the United States.
Well, you make an interesting point there about the multiple layers of the way this stuff matters, because, Christina, on the one hand, predictions far out of an election are worth about as much as a MAGA hat in San Francisco, very close to zero. But on the other hand, David speaks to a political reality in the media kind of internet world that we live in now, whether it's good or bad. It is a reality, as he says, that a lot of people who are in the resistance, who want to defeat Trump, are following this closely and trying to figure out what the issues are. And if one of the political issues is, and again, I don't know that it's provable, but if there was a perception that one person was way more electable than others, that might play into this primary. I wonder your analysis, Christina, of David's observation that if this becomes the premise, that there are multiple candidates who have a good shot and not one of them that is clearly, quote unquote, more or less electable, does that actually open up the primary field in a way for Democrats to figure out, well, wait a minute, who do they really support, not just who is being put on the throne of electability?
I agree 100%. I think that this does change the conversation because far too many Democrats are saying, well, I really like insert name Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Julian Castro, but I don't think they can win. So, there's the Biden and Bernie tend to be at the top of the ticket. Because of name recognition, because of their history serving the nation as public servants, but also, there's some demographic variables that a lot of Democrats are interested in because they think that a matchup between an older white male and another older white male will win. What this poll is showing us is, one, that the president is in trouble, but I definitely think that we're so far out. We've seen that, unfortunately, when we have catastrophic events that happen as a nation, that obviously gives the president a bump. So, if something like that happened closer closer to the election. That would change polling, obviously, especially if he was able to deal with the situation in somewhat of a guise of a leadership role. We also know that, as voters learn a lot more about particular candidates, they can be swayed. And so this is helpful for Democrats to really have honest conversations with voters beyond just Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina to say, in many ways the way Barack Obama did in 2007, you may not have thought I could win, but I'm clearly building a coalition. I'm talking about policies that are substantive to you, so you don't have to vote for your second or your third choice just because demographically you think that they're going to win against the sitting president. You can actually vote for your first choice. And that is a really important conversation for Democrats to have.
The other thing I want to ask you about, Christina, which also comes through in the Fox News poll, is for people who are traditionally patriotic, it is painful to deal with the fact that the United States is governed by a president who is a liar, who traffics in hate, who is so divisive. That is not something to be celebrated, even if people think it gives perhaps their side some political edge. It's not a happy state of affairs. And yet to euphemize that or to underplay that doesn't help it at all. And so I wonder what you think of this other finding in the Fox News poll that shows there is actually some bipartisan unity about the fact that the president sows disunity, that this is not a disagreed upon point. Again, citing Fox News, when asked, is Donald Trump drawing the country together? It's only 31%, a smaller portion of perhaps his base that even feels that way. And then there is this larger unity, Christina, 59%. I mean, that's a coalition if you ever wanted to get anything passed, that says no, at this point, speaking to Fox News pollsters, he is, quote, tearing the country apart, Christina.
Right. I think, though, there are far too many Republicans, though, who know he's a liar, and they're not concerned enough about it to do something to get him out of office. So we're looking at, say, Republicans in Congress who consistently cover for him and his lies. My concern is this. When you have people who fill out or who answer polls and say, I do think the president's ripping the country apart. I do think the president is a liar. Maybe I could be swayed. We saw this many, many years ago with Mayor Bradley in Los Angeles, when lots of voters said that they were going to vote for this African-American for governor of California, and then when they went to the polls, they did not. Obviously, there was a big concern when Obama did the same thing when he ran for the presidency. And so here we're seeing people say one thing, which is, I think he's a liar, I think he's ripping the country apart, but when it comes to actually going to the voting booth in 2020, will those individuals actually vote what they know, which is we have to change course? We don't know.
Yeah. Very well laid out, and we've called on you in more than one part of the show. Christina and David, thanks so much.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.